The best way to learn a language? Immersion. Living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Be a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts and help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations, and their tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching, so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Blue Wire. That's 60% off at babbel.com/Blue Wire, spelled BABBEL.com/Blue Wire. Rules and restrictions apply.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Robin. Welcome to the Sox Machine podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Monday, May 20th, 2024, as we bring you a new episode. The White Sox series against the Yankees went as expected. They got swept, being outscored 17-5. They got out-homered 8-1. And now the White Sox are 4-19 in road games. They have 3 more coming up as they head north to Toronto. We'll recap what happened against the Yankees, not breaking down key moments in the series, but I have a philosophical question about long-term the White Sox building or rebuilding their team. Preview the upcoming series against the Blue Jays, in which the Toronto Blue Jays are drowning right now. Yes, we do have a John Schriffen Minute because there's going to be some dialogue, I'll call it, Monday afternoon about what he said on Friday's broadcast. And we'll take a look around Major League Baseball as the Cleveland Guardians swept the Minnesota Twins this past weekend. But first, we have White Sox roster news. And joining me are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis, joining all the way from Colorado. James, we'll start with you. Tell us what's going on with the recent White Sox roster.
Well, after the end of the series, they are designating Brad Keller for assignment, which is a quick abandonment of the move to put him in the rotation. I didn't think like a bad start in Yankee Stadium was what anyone thought was like beyond the pale for like normal Brad Keller. So it wasn't like this big revocation of like the concept of like whether he was going to be a decent back end starter or not, but it's also not like, I don't know, a move that really necessarily alters their course of the season in some way either. Soroka obviously looked good. Or at least different out. Like obviously he wouldn't want 4 walks or a walk per inning under a normal basis, but to see him throwing harder and missing bats at that degree was kind of like not something that he's demonstrated earlier in the season. So it would make sense at least and I wouldn't think he would not get some other shot in the rotation at some point down the year, but that at least wasn't like something they set upon as like the confirmed move in response to this when I inquired about it. So with a lot of like moving parts going on in the minor league system where Noah Schultz is getting promoted and thus, it maybe makes sense alongside it to, bump some up from the Birmingham rotation. Drew Thorpe would probably be the easiest candidate given the level of polish and how, outstanding his performance would be. That could put all the wheels in motion for necessarily taking up one of Nastrini or Cannon from Charlotte to take the spot in the rotation and give that a whirl a little bit. Nastrini's truest field withstanding looked better in those last couple starts where, could seemingly be a logical, step. But it seems like there's a lot going on minor league promotion wise. I was also hearing that Jacob Gonzalez might be moving to Birmingham. He's obviously had been a lot better in the last month in a way where his kind of off-season swing changes have really hit out. I'm looking at the line now for May, or at least through Saturday. It was 305, 373, 458. Over in the month of May with more walks and strikeouts. So Still seems a little early, given it seemed like he was still kind of in the feel of things in the first couple of weeks, but he certainly turned it on some way where if Birmingham was kind of originally where they wanted him to play a lot, he started to show how that would be justified. So a lot of moving pieces, kind of a lot of zigging and zagging and back and forth, and hard to tell where this is going. And at some points it seemed like it was their natural inclination to ride out with a lot of veteran starters until the All-Star break and then see what they could get for them. You would thought that Keller would be on that process, but the immediate thing is that they had to move someone off for Dominic Leone, who's getting activated on Monday. And, if they like what they're seeing from Jared Schuster, if they don't want to, unsettle what they have as far as some of the relievers they have going, maybe Keller just seemed like this is not going to amount to anything seismic and let's just move on. But a little surprising.
So with Keller, James, he can decide whether or not to accept that assignment to Charlotte if he clears waivers, correct?
I believe so. I mean, the way initially the first tip that I got on it was that he was getting released. So that maybe he was unlikely to be outrighted, or he already knew that he would choose free agency. Maybe it'll be more clear when it's official, but I would be surprised if he stayed in the system.
So Soroka going back into the starting rotation, or is this because you're speculating or is this something like Nick Destrini or Jonathan Cannon now takes over the spot that Brad Keller's in?
I asked pretty directly about whether it meant Soroka, and I was told TBD. And so I reported that it's TBD. So the fact that they were not willing to go for that easy solution for say we're flipping the rotation and going back, made me think that, they're open to other alternatives.
Very fascinating. Because to your point, ride this ship to the All-Star break, and that's still 2 months away, James. And we're seeing pretty big changes right now through the White Sox roster. Jim, what are your thoughts about all roster moves of the White Sox who will be officially making sometime on Monday?
Well, when it comes to Soroka, I wonder if part of the reason he's TBD, TBA, etc., is to keep him pissed off, because he sounded like he was pretty unhappy about moving to the bullpen. And Chris Flexen, same thing. When he was moved to the bullpen, he wasn't happy about it. But Flexen righted the ship well enough to go back to the rotation and fare well enough against weaker opponents and kind of get beat up by better offenses like the Yankees. But ultimately, a guy who can help cross the day off the calendar for the time being until guys like Nistrini are ready. So, that was my first thought, is listening to the way, reading about Soroka's response to being demoted to the bullpen and then having him come up back to the rotation so soon. Perhaps they like having him being a little bit angry and throwing 96 when he didn't used to do that. So that was my first thought when it came to just being unwilling to name the easy move and going to somebody like Nistrini instead, which I think would maybe irk somebody like Soroka, when Nistrini didn't prove anything in the majors his first time and hadn't really been lighting AAA on fire. So that's my first thoughts. If you can get a Canadian good and angry, maybe that's what they're going to try to do.
Well, the other thing that's surprising to me, James, is the promotion of Noah Schultz. Now, Schultz has been pitching very well in Winston-Salem, and we've talked about this. There's no such thing as a pitching prospect because of the limited amount of bullets that they have in their arm before arm injuries. But Schultz is only 20 years old. He was 3 years younger than the average player in High A in Winston-Salem. Very impressive numbers, 42 strikeouts to 7 walks and 27 and a third innings in just 7 starts made. But now this is a pretty big test. And the White Sox are not just trying to get him to ramp up and go deeper into games and accumulate more innings. They are turning up the difficulty for Noah Schultz now, setting up to Double-A. Are you surprised by this promotion?
A little, but now I think of it in terms of his inning limit. He's only supposed to get around 75 to 80 this year. You only got 50 left. So if you want to let's see him, he's, the peripherals are pretty good at Winston-Salem. Even though he's had some bad innings here and there, it's very as Jim has described, he beats himself for a little bit, but isn't necessarily challenged by the competition. This is kind of, your last, it's not late and can certainly space things out, but there's not a ton of time to work if they want to get him a Double-A and see where his stuff handles there. And then plot out where he is when he can have a full, over 100 inning season next year. And you start thinking about his proximity a little bit. Using 40 to 50 innings at a level that you think maybe his stuff is actually going to figure out how to use his changeup and stuff like that. I think it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And Jim, just the way though, like if you're going to try to drag out these 50 innings that James was referencing to with Schultz, he acts more like an opener, right? In Double-A, like 2-3 innings max. If you're trying to stretch out 50 innings for the rest of the season, because the Barons right now, they're still in first place. They're 24-14. They're 2.5 games ahead. The Tennessee Smokies, which is the Chicago Cubs Double-A affiliate. The White Sox organization really wants to win the Southern League North Division in the first half. So the Barons have some playoff games in September. If you're worried about an innings limit with Schultz, while you have everybody else in the Barons rotation, reading your minor keys, Jim, they're going 6, sometimes 7 innings. It kind of breaks up the pattern of everybody else and how the White Sox are developing pitchers at Double-A right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll be 2 to 3 innings. I think he'll probably continue on his, he's on the Tanner McDougal, Peyton Pallette, post Tommy John surgery plan where it's 4 innings or like 65 to 70 pitches, whichever comes first.
Okay.
And in Schultz's case, he's just nailing 4 innings every time because he's able to, when he throws strikes, he more or less succeeds. And not just like in a way that, every pitcher needs to throw strikes and avoid walks. Like he can throw 3/4 of his pitches in the strike zone. And if he's doing that, that's all he needs to do. Like maybe he'll give up a homer or maybe he'll, have his lone walk and then sequence like a wild pitch and a single that brings in a run. But ultimately, he just needs to fill up the zone and get ahead in counts. And high A hitters can't handle him. So that's why I think, Birmingham isn't necessarily a bad call. My question was like if they just wanted him to build up workload because he's already doubled his professional innings limit this season in 7 starts. Like he entered the year with 27 innings as a pro. Now he's at 27 1/3 this year. So I wondered if they were concerned about getting him up and down 4 times every week. And he's pitching every Saturday. He's not pitching every 5 days or every 6 days on a minor league schedule. He's a Saturday starter. So he has more rest built in. I think they can still have him adhere to the, 4 innings, 65, 70 pitches and do that every week and then just see how it goes. If they see his stuff is flagging a little bit or his release points are varying in a way that they don't like, maybe they'll shut him down for a week or, put him on the injured list, bump him down, maybe go to Arizona to finish. There are a bunch of ways they can kind of manage a workload without artificially implementing a hard stop if he's cruising. So I think best case scenario, he keeps doing what he's doing at Birmingham. The more, I guess, accounting for the fact that he's 20 and facing Double-A hitters who are, quite a bit better than high A hitters, he has to learn how to, work the edges of the strike zone a little bit more, set up hitters a little bit more, use his whole arsenal a little bit more. So maybe those 4 innings won't be as easy to come by every time out, but it's more of a challenge in what he's showing. My question or my concern would be like if he gets thumped, where he's having these really laborious innings and he's just not building up the workload, do they have to send him back down? Or are they committed to him being in Birmingham the rest of the year, making it work no matter what? Because generally speaking, when it comes to high profile prospects, they don't go backwards. It's always forward or at the level. Unless it's like, we just saw with Jared Kelly, who's a way, less crucial process. He was never as important as Schultz, certainly isn't now. And only now did they move him back this season, after multiple years of failure. So high profile prospects, they really don't like, I guess, sending the message of you failed at this level. So that's why I think it's maybe a little bit early for Schultz because there's a lot of season left. But there's a chance that his stuff is so good and his unique his release point is so unique that he may have a brief adjustment period and then like continue doing what he's been doing.
Yeah, if Schultz is as good as he was with Winston-Salem with Birmingham, then I think Schultz is on the White Sox radar sooner than later. Not this season, but late 2025, 2026. You'd start maybe thinking about Schultz appearing in games in the major leagues, even though he may be only 21 or 22 years old at that time. It really depends on how he does at Birmingham. So the White Sox will be challenging Schultz, and James, just to circle back. So the one thing that's remaining here is figuring out what the White Sox are doing with that starting spot, right? If they do call up Nastrini or if they decide to put Soroka back in.
Right. That would be the one thing.
All right. So that's something to pay attention to. Again, you can follow James on Twitter. So when he has that breaking news, follow him on Twitter. He's at JR Fegan. And of course, we'll be recapping, providing our additional analysis of all the roster moves the White Sox are making, as it looks like they're going through another line change of the pitching rotation. You can read that on SoxMachine.com. This past weekend for the White Sox, honestly, I'm just going to be real with you guys. It's not worth breaking down each game against the Yankees because it was very repetitive. Yankees hit home runs. White Sox do not. Yankees win. White Sox lose. There you go. That is the series recap between the White Sox and the Yankees.
Jokes.
Yeah, Jokes had a good series. He had some moments. But here's my concern, gents, about the White Sox position player approach, because when they brought in Josh Barfield, they want to be more athletic. They want to have better defenders. And it seems like they want a team position player wise more along the lines of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Okay, Arizona just went to the World Series. Some people are on board with that. I'm out. I'm out on that because power is still king in baseball, folks. In the top 10 home run leaders for teams, all 6 division leaders are in the top 10 when it comes to homers. The Orioles and Yankees are tied right now with 68 homers, leading the league. The Dodgers are third with 63, and the Brewers are fourth with 58. There's your 4 division leaders out of the 6. And then the Phillies and Mariners are still in the top 10. So home runs are still king. The White Sox, damn, they are last by miles in every offensive category. Batting average, 215. On base percentage, 275. On base percentage, the Dodgers have a team OBP of 340. That would be like a minor miracle right now. The White Sox can just get one of their regulars to have a 340 on base percentage. And that's the Dodgers team on base percentage, which is just crazy. And the White Sox are slugging just 333. And the reason I bring this point up, James, giving you an opportunity to tell me, Josh, you're wrong, just be patient. The White Sox had more plate appearances in this series with runners in scoring position than the Yankees. But the White Sox went 3 for 24. And for the season now with runners in scoring position, the White Sox have a team OPS of 566, which, again, last in Major League Baseball. So I'm very skeptical about let's be more contact oriented. Let's try to reduce the amount of strikeouts. At this moment, I'm just like, let's go back to 2000 White Sox building and let's just aim for home runs, because even though you have all these veterans and you have a talent deficiency, I just don't see the path here, James, especially after a series like the Yankees where being out homered 8 home runs to 1 in a 3-game series. Yeah, the White Sox are going to lose a lot of games going that way.
I think like all your points about how you want a team constructed are valid. And yes, the series was an example of how a kind of contact oriented team can be blown off the field by a power team that, creates a lot of damage whenever they get opportunities. When you said 2 regulars or multiple regulars hitting 340 OBP, I just thought, like, what do you want? A team full of Tommy Phams? Like, that's just
yes. Why can't I have that, James? Why can't I have?
I would just say, like, this roster is like clearly so not a realization of what they would want their vision of the team to be yet. Like, they're also the worst defense in the league.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
Above average, and that's clearly not like we're not like seeing the product of their design like as they envision it just fail. We're seeing something that doesn't like fit their standards at all. There's just so little of this current position player group that I think is necessarily who on this team is like, how many people, especially active with Luis Robert out, are going to be like major parts of like their core 2-3 years ago. I think we're not getting like a great sight of what their view is of an offense by what they were able to sign for like less than $3 million annually. Like I don't like Paul DeJong was like a great, or Paul DeJong is a great get in terms of like his price point and like the floor he's able to give you. Is Paul DeJong like their ideal shortstop? I have no idea. I don't think we can base it entirely off Paul DeJong's presence. I don't necessarily think like you can look at their system right now and be like, oh, there's like a bunch of like 70 raw power corner guys all over the system that clearly they have something else in mind. It's a lot of like looking for that all around package, up the middle players who are, more in design of like Corbin Carroll and Alec Thompson. So sort of the prospects that you associate with Arizona, it's a lot more of like, maybe they could have, plus power, but that's not the defining feature of the profile. They're clearly not just seeking that out in the draft in some way. Like it'd be nice if you had more power hitting profiles in your up the middle prospects, or at least some of those intriguing corner profiles on the side. I don't think Tim Elko can fill that kind of gap on his own. Brian Ramos, I guess, is a little bit of answer, though we don't know where he's going to fall between that kind of 20 to 30 homer ceiling. But I just think we're really far away. Like this group hasn't necessarily even had a draft yet. Like certainly not like Paul Giannis has not been in the draft room like to talk about what kind of prospects they want, or same for Josh Barfield. So as much as like the same amateur scouting group is in place, like they're also not operating under Kenny Williams anymore. Like we haven't really seen them get under the same, get the runway to see what their ideal type of player that they would want to add if they had full autonomy would be. That said, I don't think it's like, oh, it'll just be sunshine and roses once gets to really put his vision in plan. I don't want to like constantly kick the can down the road. And certainly he's responsible, and this roster is on his record as well. But I feel like it's a little soon to say like they don't care about these things at all.
Yeah, the only thing that comes to mind when it comes to just the path the White Sox might be chasing is it feels a little bit Royals-y. The Diamondbacks were basically a 500 team last year, got hot, went to the World Series. Now they're a little bit below 500 with like an even run differential. So they're kind of the same team they were last year, just sequencing in a way that doesn't pay or doesn't generate immediate excitement. So they're kind of maybe trying to back their way into the postseason once again. And you go back to the Royals when they went to back-to-back World Series, and they did it in a very specific, unique, hard to replicate way. And then the magic stopped working, and then they were lost in the woods for 8 years. And with the White Sox chasing that model with just investing in relievers, thinking, well, we just need our version of Herrera, Davis, Holland to get through 7, 8, 9, and we'll never lose a lead ever again. And just realizing that, oh, there's more to it than that. To go to the Diamondbacks model, and you never. With Pedro Grifoli's so effusive about everything his bosses do that he was just raving about the way the Diamondbacks play baseball. Talking about the difference a bright guy like Josh Barfield will make. Just like you don't know
raving about the great pickup Brad Keller was in spring training.
Yeah. So you never know what he actually believes versus like what he thinks he needs to say to keep himself employed. So you don't know how excited everybody is about the Diamondbacks model, but it does fit with like couldn't call it a trend because you need 3, but it does fit that. How do we build a team, or how do we replicate a team that got to a World Series without spending a lot of money and without like chasing the same skills everybody else chases, OBP, power, while also being able to defend a position as well. Teams have to pay out their nose for that or develop themselves. And the White Sox, they always seem like when it comes to trying to acquire through the open market, they're always looking for shortcuts. The Diamondbacks seem like the most recent shortcut.
That's good points. Good points by both of you. So congrats, James. You talked me off the ledge a little bit.
I talked you back on?
Jim almost talked me back on.
Both have sticks that were poking at you from opposite directions.
Yeah, the devil's on each shoulder.
Yeah. This ends up just being an email to Chris Getz then for me being like, home runs are still important. Like, I get what Getz and Barfield are saying. We want to be more athletic. We want to be more aggressive on the base paths. We want to put pressure on the opposing team. We don't want to be reliant so much on home runs because right now we just don't have the talent base to be hitting the ball out of the ballpark. But home runs are still important. And they are definitely this season, and I'm sure they're going to be uber important when it comes to the postseason, which we continue to talk about that storyline. If you out homer your opponents, you're going to win in October. And that's the whole point of playing baseball, is eventually getting to October. That's one goal. And there's many ways you could get to October. But once you get into October, ball go far, team go far. And that's just in this series. It's the Yankees, again, had fewer plate appearances with runners in scoring position than the White Sox, but they hit 8 homers, and that drives up their run total. And it's really hard for the White Sox to come back when they're hitting singles. So we'll see what happens in mid-August when the Yankees come visit the White Sox for a Monday-Wednesday series. But yeah, the Yankees very powerful, especially Juan Soto. The first 3 of that order, Volpe, he's dangerous on the base paths, but I feel bad for opposing pitchers when they have to face Soto and then Aaron Judge. Like, that's just not fair right now. And Aaron Judge has been on fire as of late. And I guess Juan Soto could be thanked for getting Brad Keller released, James. Poor Brad Keller. This is a segue then to the John Schriffen Minute, because for a series that's not a lot to talk about, the thing that is going to be talked about, especially on Monday for those that are in Chicago, will be this audio clip from John Schriffen in Friday's game.
Hey, it's my first game.
You're good. Don't worry about it. All good. If any of those radio losers clip it and try to make fun of you, nobody cares about them anyway.
You know what?
Now, Schriffen, on Sunday's broadcast, if you did get a chance to watch, he made a sarcastic, self-deprecating joke when Gordon Beckham was reminiscing about being young and saying stupid things. John's like, saying stupid things? Who does that? So I would hope that would be a good way to move on from what was said on Friday and a lot of unnecessary drama, especially on social media. There's been a lot of Twitter opinions about sports radio from Friday night. Our good friend Lawrence Holmes talked about what it's like covering the Chicago White Sox on 670 The Score on his podcast, The House of L. I've got that podcast episode linked on our page on soxmachine.com for this episode. I recommend checking it out. Lawrence, I know you're listening. Thank you so much for your high praise of us at Sox Machine. The one thing I will say good about Schriffen, and this tags along with what James has been reporting, that when James is at the clubhouse, so is John Schriffen, is that when you're watching the broadcast as of late, Schriffen is doing an excellent job of providing notes on every single White Sox player that's in the lineup. The broadcasts are being more informative. Just because he says one thing that lasts 4 seconds and it irritates some and it's going to get blown up out of proportion doesn't mean that John Schriffen is doing a bad job. And I appreciate the extra effort that he is going to right now, going back to his reporting days in ABC News, reporting what he's hearing in the clubhouse. It makes it a more informative broadcast, especially when Gordon Beckham is stepping in and filling in for Steve Stone. And the last thing that I'll say about John Schriffen, and hopefully this is the last John Schriffen minute that we have for a while. If you don't like the TV broadcast, Len Casper and Darren Jackson are doing an awesome job on the radio side. So for White Sox fans, you do have a great option that you can always flip over to the radio if John Schriffen's not your cup of tea. So that's my monologues, the John Schriffen minute from watching the games. Jim, I know you only got a chance to watch a few innings because you're in Colorado for a family event, a wedding. Do you have quick thoughts? Usually, because this is your segment and I'm stealing it right now.
Yeah, here's my 5 minutes. No, I saw the blowback on Twitter first before understanding what happened. Like, I saw people arguing about the merits of sports radio, and then I had to work backwards to some score folks getting mad to working back to Schriffen's original comment about radio losers. And, both sides, not, I think, their finest moments. I think with, Schriffen, there are a couple moments, I think, when it comes to like the high profile stuff. When you look at just what he's drawn attention for, the haters comment, losers comment, some of his more excitable moments. And sometimes it does feel like as polished as he is, as much work as he puts in, his reporter background, sometimes, it does feel like the game is being called by a 17-year-old, just like these brief lapses of emotion that kind of come out of nowhere, or these mood swings sometimes, especially with umpires. So like that's I think I saw you mention that.
He doesn't like umpires.
Yeah, it's just like it still feels like the one area of the game where he feels like he's allowed to issue criticism, and so like he just goes full bore into it in a way that's very jarring, and what just happened here? You have to rewind a bit to see, like, did anything set up to change in tone? And no, it's just one bad strike call, and all of a sudden storm clouds appear. So that's I think a continuation on a theme, but I am curious about this. I'm not even sure if it's a strategy, but it's one thing he's doing right now is, I think with Benetti, even though he was a team employee, he did consider himself media. Maybe it's because he was active in so many sports as well and other networks that he was just kind of a media member. Whereas Schriffen doesn't seem to be considering himself a media member in this regard. It seems like he's played safe or what have you, but it's creating a divide where I think people who are sensing he's not one of us, or does he think he's better than us? And then all of a sudden, the gloves come off. So those are two reasons why I think there could be more Schriffen minutes in the future. But hopefully, by issuing that little bit of a mea culpa there, that by the time Monday comes around and all the shows go through their cycles, it'll die down a little bit.
Now, that's what I hope. I mean, people are going to be like, well, Sox Machine carries water for 6-7 score. Yeah. We're on Bernstein and Holmes twice a week. We are paid analysts on their radio station. We hope that you continue listening to 6-7 The Score, especially if you're a Bears fan or a Bulls fan, or if you also root for the Chicago Cubs. They cover the White Sox in great length on 6-7 The Score. I'm just letting everybody know, especially those that are not in Chicago, that if you go on social media wondering what the hell is going on, now you know, and they're going to get their chance.
You still might wonder what the hell is going on.
Yeah, you still might. And again, if Schriffen's not your cup of tea, Len Casper and Darren Jackson are crushing it. Go listen to the radio broadcast. But yeah, if people are calling out, well, Sox Machine carries water for 6-7. Yeah, no kidding. We're on their station multiple times a week. Continue listening to sports radio. It can be entertaining, and it can be very informative, especially the Bernstein and Holmes show. We are going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. But coming up next, the Chicago White Sox continue playing games. They'll be heading to Toronto, and that Blue Jays team is in serious trouble. We'll break that down and take a look around Major League Baseball next on the Sox Machine podcast.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Owning a small business can be overwhelming. How can your business stand out and connect with customers? Easy. Get Constant Contact. There's so many places to reach customers. Email, text messages, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, live events, the list goes on. How are you, as the business owner, expected to own all of those channels? That's where Constant Contact comes in to help. With Constant Contact, you'll reach new audiences, grow your customer list, and communicate more effectively to sell more, raise more, and fast-track growth. I use this to grow my email list, and you should too. So get going and start growing your business today with a free trial at ConstantContact.com. Just go to ConstantContact.com right now. Constant Contact, helping the small stand tall. ConstantContact.com.
Welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast. As I mentioned before going to break, the White Sox now head to Toronto, and the Blue Jays are drowning right now. They have a 20-25 record. They're last place in the American League East. They're already 11.5 games back of the New York Yankees. They did win on Sunday, but in their last 10 games, they are 4-6. Here's the surprising thing. Their expected win-loss record, 17-28. So the Blue Jays are technically overachieving by 3 games. And the canaries and the coal mines up in Canada are just howling right now of what is going on with this Blue Jays team. The pitching problems for this series, Monday is an afternoon game, 2:07 p.m. Central Time. Eric Fetty will be making the start for the White Sox against Jose Barrios, in which Barrios has a 2.82 ERA this season. Tuesday night at 6:07 p.m. Central Time, Garrett Crochet will take the ball, opposing UC Kikuchi, which Kikuchi's been pitching very well too. He's got a 2.60 ERA. And then Wednesday night, Mike Clevenger against old friend Chris Bassett, which Bassett is struggling right now. He's got an ERA north of 5. Now, about the Blue Jays, Sportsnet's Ben Nicholson-Smith, he's a great beat reporter for the Blue Jays, reported in what their general manager, Ross Atkins, had to say. And Atkins said, quote, "We believe in this talent. There is time left, but there's a massive sense of urgency, and we need to get it turned around soon," end quote. Boy, James, that quote sounds very familiar to White Sox fans.
Yes, the dreaded "we believe in this group." I've heard it many times. I feel like it's representative of this new generation that's like saber oriented, but also trying to sound a bit less dehumanizing than kind of the saber way of the GMs, where it's like talking about like, we believe in the character in that room. And yeah, it sounds real bad. I feel like their offensive core is some great Bo Bichette seasons aside, it's just not been as like overpowering as we thought it was when we were listing them all out when they're first getting promoted like 3-4 years ago. George Springer, not to speak ill of shopping stock and market for corner outfield bats and committing a lot of years to them, but I don't think he's really necessarily panned out as much as we probably thought. And certainly with some of the injuries he's picked up and the start he has right now is not helping him a whole lot. So I definitely thought they should have signed George Springer instead of, was that the Nomar Mazara year? It was some year where the alternative that came up was unsatisfying. But it's not
That's
delivered.
Many years, James.
It has not delivered into the Toronto into the superpower I think we were all forecasting 4 or 5 years back, even if they right the ship a little bit now. And when Val Noah comes back or something like that, I still don't think they've become the team that we thought they were going to be when their window was kind of opening the same time the Sox was. So
to follow up, James, I imagine you're part of many grapevines, many maybe text groups with other reporters of Major League Baseball. Like, I know I'm hard on Andrew Vaughn. Vlad Guerrero Jr. has a 771 OPS. Okay, not as high as it should be. He's struggling. But his slugging percentage is below 400. He's got a 395 slugging percentage. Vlad Jr. only has 4 home runs this season, 1 more than Andrew Vaughn. That really surprises me. Like, in the inner circles around baseball that you're part of, James, do people talk about the 2024 Blue Jays like some of the national baseball reporters talked about the 2022 White Sox? Like, has this window already closed in the Blue Jays and they're the last ones to find out?
I can't say they're like a regular source of gossip, but I think we talk about how they've been kind of disappointing a little bit. I can't say like this is a circus and there's all this interpersonal stuff and drama about their front office like slipping out the way maybe the White Sox are grabbing attention for it. But yeah, they're weird. I mostly harassed my Blue Jays friend about it, who was like angrily like retweeting people from 5 years ago talking about how good Nate Pearson was supposed to be. So there's definitely a lot of like lost promise in a way, and growing to resent the prospects they were sold on that never really came to fruition. Alejandro Kirk is someone who's like was really lauded as going to be like this hit machine, a catcher, and like really has wound up just having like the first half of 2022 and hasn't looked really very similar since. So they have their own like slate of like core players who are, seem fun and quirky, and then like, the bottom fell out, and now that our targets of resentment.
Yeah, Jay, because you called it when we were previewing this hellscape, this gauntlet of 39 games. You circled this series as one that could be very similar to the series the White Sox played not that long ago in St. Louis, in which the White Sox surprised. They won on the road. They won that series against the Cardinals. And even James added to that as well, like all hell broke loose in St. Louis, and how encouraging that is as White Sox fans to be that team that creates really bad chaos. And I think the table is set here. If the Blue Jays don't win this series against the White Sox, I mean, the pot is already boiling. I just wonder if it'll overflow here if the White Sox are able to steal this series.
Yeah, thinking back to the other similarities of the 2022 White Sox, like they've had some surprising successes, like Davis Schneider, coming, preposterously mustachioed left fielder come out of nowhere and like being like a really compelling offensive figure in his like 2.5 seasons in the league. Wasn't really on any radar, wasn't among the hype prospects, and he's delivering more than others right now. You have Alek Manoah, who's wandering in the woods a little bit. He seems like he might be back to where he was. So, Jose Barrios looks like he's at the top of his game right now. And a couple of years ago, he was a little bit of a weak link in the Blue Jays rotation, and they wondered, like, did they make a mistake in extending him? So, like, you have these successes the way the White Sox in 2022 had, like, Johnny Cueto's 25 miracle starts, and Elvis Andrus is like, just showing up freely available in August and playing out of his mind when they need him the most and just getting nothing for it. Those are the kind of developments that you think like a charm team, like the Yankees in a lot of years where they would have like Mike Ford or Mike Tauchman or Aaron Small or just these random 28-year-olds that would just come up and deliver 3 months of great baseball when needed to help put them over the top and endure some injuries and everything like that. And the Blue Jays are getting those individual bumps and they're sliding further back. So yeah, everything is sliding the wrong direction. And one thing I'm watching with this series is while the White Sox have allowed the most homers while hitting the fewest, which I think goes a long way in explaining where they are just in the greater baseball world. But the Blue Jays, right now have similar problems. Looking it up right now to make sure I got the numbers right. They're tied for the second fewest homers, and they've allowed the third most. So they have the same disparity going on that is just basically unsolvable in 2024 baseball. So this is a case where can the White Sox maybe help them normalize a little bit and regress towards a more positive zone, the way the Phillies were kind of playing a little flat baseball, and then they just used the White Sox and stomped them and turbocharged. Now they can't be stopped. Like, perhaps the Blue Jays get a similar boost by getting right against the pitchers, but also, if this is just what they are, like I couldn't, I wouldn't know how to bet on it even if I were a betting type, but just thinking that there could be a managerial change either during or after a White Sox series for the Blue Jays is something I would consider putting a small amount of money on.
Wow. Well, again, Eric Fedde, in his last 6 starts, the White Sox are 5-1. On the season, the White Sox are 9-0 against the spread, which means if they lose when Fedde starts, they've only lost by 1 run or they won the game. So I'm looking at Monday and Tuesday. We talked about this with Fedde and Crochet pitching back-to-back as White Sox fans. This is when you should be most confident. It's just the White Sox are facing the Blue Jays' best starters right now in Barrios and Kikuchi, as Gaussman is having a little bit of struggles to start the season. Blue Jays bats are facing the White Sox best starting pitchers. So we could see some low-scoring, tight games on Monday and Tuesday. I've got a good feeling about this series, James. Like, I think the White Sox could win this series, and Hell, let's bring on more chaos, right? I mean, if we've got things, we got to always talk about chaotic things with the White Sox. Why can't the White Sox generate more chaos for other teams? So I am rooting for the White Sox to generate as much chaos as possible for the Toronto Blue Jays, despite your Blue Jays loving friend.
He's Canadian. He has no choice. He's not happy about it. But yeah, I think this was like the series where I could see the series being like the road trip being like they just get annihilated in New York, and for the most part that happened. But they win 2 in Toronto, and they come away saying like yeah, it's a successful trip, where like kind of greatly like push this team that's already out teetering on the edge over it by like stealing in like a couple of victories and or having like great starting pitching performances that allows them to win a close game, which is kind of the only way they win. But yeah, Fetty and Crochet have looked good of recent. Crochet was a little wonky last time out, but as far as stuff wise, I think he's been pretty strong in figuring out how to sequence his slider and cutter in a way where they don't run into problems. It seems like a place where they could take advantage and cause a little craziness. I do worry about them facing the Blue Jays' 2 best pitchers. Barrios is not someone they like hit super well back when they had a good offense, and maybe that could be a benefit that they're all new players now. But he certainly seems like he's been the level of tilt he like throws everything on always makes me wonder like how anyone hits him. But I've obviously struggle enough to know that is real. But when he's on, he looks very fearsome to a lineup that's not really throwing a bunch of left-handed weapons at the opposition, and then have Kikuchi come in, probably neutralize Gavin Sheets, and probably face an overmatched Andrew Benintendi because Grifol tends to run him out there regardless of platoon advantage, and maybe you could have a pretty good night. But if Corey Julks is indeed the savior, then obviously the plan is neutralized, and the White Sox will win 2 out of 3. So all
there
good.
You go. So it all comes out of Corey Julks. Jim's guy.
Like we planned.
Like they planned. And then we'll wrap up the show like we have been doing for the Monday episodes, taking a look around Major League Baseball. And when it comes to the American League Central, kind of an eye-opening result this past weekend. The Cleveland Guardians swept the Minnesota Twins. And your AL Central standings right now, the Guardians still lead the AL Central. They are 30-17. The Kansas City Royals, shout out to the Royals. They're 29-19. They're 10 games above 500. And the Minnesota Twins are now 5.5 games back at the Guardians. They're in 3rd place. They're just 1 game ahead of the Detroit Tigers. And the Twins this season are 7-0 against the White Sox, 5-10 against everyone else in the American League Central. The Guardians are 3-4 against the White Sox, 7-1 against everyone else in the AL Central. And Jim, I point out this series because obviously big series win for the Cleveland Guardians. And the fact that they're able to overcome the significant injury to Shane Bieber and still lead the American League Central, like big props to their organization. They are playing very good baseball in the first 47 games of the season. But the Minnesota Twins had that monster winning streak. They got super hot. They inched closer to the first place after starting the season 7-13. And now after this series sweep, they've fallen back. They're 5.5 games back, and now just a game ahead of Detroit for 4th place in the division. I still can't make heads or tails of the Minnesota Twins, and I am wondering, since they were the heavy favorites coming into the season, if they should not be the favorites after the first quarter of the season to win this division. How are you feeling about the Twins and maybe even the Guardians for their success this weekend?
Yeah, it feels like, 5.5 games after, nearly 50 in the bank. That's significant. I think that's enough to, draw playoff odds considerably closer. I'm looking it up right now just to see what Fangraph's saying versus like my gut feeling, but I would think that they're drawing pretty close to being even. Let's see what they say for the Central here.
Well, what is your gut feeling?
My gut feeling is that Twins just might be a little bit over, like a little bit reliant on Byron Buxton doing great things. And when he's not, when Royce Lewis is kind of up and down, they have a hard, even with like Ryan Jeffers breaking out, it's really like they're not, they struggle to score runs. They didn't really spend money in the offseason when they had a chance to do so and separate themselves from the division. So if they were to stagnate and just not get there, banking on some of the talent that's been electric when healthy, but also unhealthy or at least injury prone, this would be the result, where a team like the Guardians is just very adept at never spending money and plugging holes as they come along and just getting by, even with new manager. The shift from Terry Francona, Stephen Vogt really not making a difference. I thought that might have made a huge difference.
Right.
Francona being somebody who just had a preternatural feel for putting fringe players in a position to succeed, whether they stick or whether they just buy the team time until something better comes along. But yeah, looking at Fangraphs now, the Twins are still favored full season, but only by games. So they're projected to win 86 games, Guardians 85. So considerably closer, basically a coin flip at this point. Also, Royals projected to go 84 and 78. So right now it's a real 3-team race. And yeah, Twins just the sausage luck, I think, has run out a little bit, and now they're back to just how healthy is your offense and how charged can they be on a reliable basis? And they seem to fluctuate in and out.
Can they even afford to buy at the deadline to better their team? That's another question. If you couldn't add payroll this offseason, can you add payroll as buyers to try to come back and win the American League Central? So I still have concerns about the Twins. Like, I felt like an idiot after they won like 12 games in a row when I was so concerned about the Twins when they were 7-13, but after this weekend where they get swept by Cleveland, it's like I still have those same concerns. I just don't know. They have allowed Cleveland and now a pesky Kansas City team to build up some games ahead of them. This is going to be a lot tougher for the Twins to come back, and we'll see if Detroit's got one more run. On the Royals, my last thing before I pass it over to you guys, the Kansas City Royals could really use an outfielder that can hit. Pay attention to their interest in Tommy Pham. Tommy Pham could make a lot of sense for the Kansas City Royals. And I know the White Sox would trade Pham to anyone that's willing to give up something interesting. If I'm the Royals, I think I'd be pick up the phone, calling Chris Getz and asking what it would take to get Tommy Pham. All right, James, I'll pass it over to you.
With the Royals, it's just the tin can on the end of the rope.
Yeah, that's right. It's like...
It's much easier than the phone.
Yeah, much easier. Just probably knock. They probably have an office at Guaranteed, right? Just knock on the door. Hey, Chris. James, what's catching your attention around Major League Baseball?
This is obscure, but so I figure this will work because, like, I'm sure the listeners don't mind hearing things about the Cubs struggling, but like they lost 3 out of 4 to Pittsburgh this weekend, and I heard, like, I was talking, Casada Sharma covering Athletic is one of my best friends, and like we were asking about this guy that called up. He's like, they literally have no one else healthy. There are no other healthy pitchers on the roster. Like, to fill out like this spot in the pitching staff, there's like no one else they could call up without making a 40-man move. Like, that's how banged up they are.
Wow.
With everybody. So on the same lines, I heard like, hey, the Cubs are giving Matthew Thompson a look at AAA. Maybe they maybe found something that the White Sox didn't. I was like, starting to put 2 and 2 together that maybe there's sheer carnage that brought him up here. So like Thompson was better in AA with the Cubs. He's, his ERA was a bit lower. He was striking out like over a batter inning, but also his walk rate still stayed a little bit elevated. Sub 4 ERA for somebody who struggled there in the past. I was at least, some more consistency. But it remains to be seen like what exactly they're going to do with him in AAA, because they used him on the bullpen once. It was like a mess. He like walked 3 guys, but also like, why did he switch from his role? So kind of wondering if the Cub pitching staff carnage, and obviously wondering like what the situation with Kyle Hendricks is going to be and how much longer they can stick like a franchise legend. But also seeing like whether or not it has like a ripple effect for someone that we've obviously been paying attention to, and wondering if there was the second round draft ceiling that he had is accessible in another organization, and whether the Twin will meet it for some reason, just because of the level of turnover they had.
Sounds like a team that could use Brad Keller.
Yeah, they should check the waiver wire for sure.
I like the comments that Craig Counsell had when asked about Kyle Hendricks, who's been really struggling. And Counsell's like, I need innings, man. He's here until somebody else is healthy to take over his spot. So great confidence booster from Craig Counsell to Kyle Hendricks.
Very late stage John Danks.
Very late stage John Danks. in that series against the Pirates. Shout out to Paul Skeens. I mean, he seems to be the real deal, like fantastic. His first 2 starts against the Cubs, and he was better his second time out. 11 strikeouts, no hit, 6 innings, like just fantastic. Jim, how about you? What's catching your attention around Major League Baseball?
Well, following up on the previous, what caught my attention from the previous Monday, following the Royals a little bit told me nothing. Lost 2 out of 3 of the Mariners, then swept the A's. So still, bums, still, looking respectable against a better team, but also not beating them, or at least a better team on paper, a team with higher expectations. So still waiting to see, waiting for them to show me something in terms of beating a better team and really announcing themselves. But I mean, they're maxing out their opportunities against every lesser team, basically. So that's how, that's one of the shortcuts for getting to the postseason faster than you think. So still, cap off them, but still trying to figure them out. Thing I'm watching right now is with the Astros, starting to dust themselves off a little bit. Kind of a little bit of the Undertaker, Jeff, rising out of the coffin, coinciding with Jose Abreu maybe coming back, still getting at bats, extended spring training, or in the complex league on the side, and nobody really knowing how he's doing, and watching their lineups and seeing John Singleton doing an okay job at first base, nothing special, but kind of like Gavin Sheetsy at first base. If he were to take over for Jose Abreu, I imagine that would be a similar line. You could do better, but he could also do worse. A major league bat of some kind, playing first base every day, even if he's not the quintessential slugging first baseman type. And then you have Joey Loperfido allowing Yordan Alvarez to DH, so they have a little bit more defensive ability and flexibility in the lineup, and allowing their best bats to play in bat first positions. And to see Abreu come back into that when signs are kind of pointing, at least circumstantially, that maybe that really was a big part of the problem, having first baseman hitting 100. That I feel bad for him, because obviously all the great years he gave to the White Sox, but it is fascinating in terms of how much money he's still owed, how they've been able to improve without him, and now he's coming back, and how much is he owed? Not just in terms of money, but when it comes to the credibility as in Houston, or do they really have to move on? It's the classic tension in terms of a sunk cost and the emotional aspect versus the admitting a mistake, which I saw Jeff Bagwell working with Jose Abreu in the complex, and Bagwell coming in and having an outsized role in organizational decision making when James Click was pushed out. And is it a case where Bagwell really wants Abreu to play well because Bagwell was pushing for that sign? There are a whole bunch of interesting dynamics here that I'm looking forward to seeing how they play out in any direction. I hope it's not the end for Abreu, even though it's certainly the case. But I guess if you were to spin it also to a White Sox angle, besides Abreu being a White Sox great, is that when you have somebody hitting 100, or above and below 100 over the course of weeks. And you see the effect of just bringing in a replacement level, or even slightly above replacement level replacements to take those bets. Then you watch Martin Maldonado hits, and just the way the White Sox
I know where this is going.
All of his intangibles. Yeah, and just I think you can numb yourself to expecting Maldonado or somebody like him to go 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 and just provide nothing in terms of competitive at bats. But then when you actually see it play out somewhere else, just here's an unremarkable first baseman taking the place of somebody who was just among the league's worst, and now their lineup functions a lot better. It is a lesson I think the White Sox would be smart to heed.
Well, the Astros have won 8 of their last 10 games. They're still 5 games below 500. They're 21-26, but they're just 4 games back of the first place Seattle Mariners. Seattle is visiting the Yankees. The Rangers are visiting the Phillies this week. The Astros are playing at home against the Angels. Things can get real tight real quick in the American League West. The Seattle and Texas, I think, have missed out on a golden opportunity to really distance themselves from Houston. And now what was thought of Houston maybe being done, dead, Instead, they could be right back in this division race.
Oh, speaking of the Angels, the other thing followed briefly last week. Ron Washington calling out a player for missing a suicide squeeze attempt and realizing, like, yeah, Ron Washington wouldn't have fixed the White Sox. I feel pretty confident about that. Like, I was wondering if he turned the Angels into like respectable, like, wild card contender after all they've been through. Like, maybe he would have had the magic to, be that player first manager who also, can instill some accountability, and doesn't seem like that's happening.
Well, the Angels have scored 70 more runs than the White Sox have this season, but they only have 4 more wins. That's crazy. The Angels are very underachieving this season. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Let us know in the comments section on soxmachine.com what is catching your guys' attention around Major League Baseball. Again, it is a quick turnaround for the White Sox. They play at 2:00 against the Toronto Blue Jays on Monday. We'll have the first pitch post for you guys to chat along with other White Sox fans on soxmachine.com. But if you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, maybe you were listening to Lawrence Holmes and took his advice and started listening to us, you can subscribe to the Sox Machine podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also listen to the Sox Machine podcast now on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James, and I would highly recommend doing that, especially when he's got breaking roster news for the White Sox, like you reported at the beginning of this show, at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you enjoy our work and you want full access to our White Sox coverage, you can sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. It's just $5 a month to gain full access. It helps us greatly to not only keep the lights on, but allow us to send James out and cover games when the White Sox are out on the road. And we also have other tiers of support, additional benefits. We still have a couple spots open in our Veterans Committee tier as well if we want to be part of our group chats. And we're going to be meeting with our VCs this week to share some updates that we are planning on making later this year on Sox Machine. So again, several different tiers of support, additional benefits. If you enjoy our work and you want more, you can get more. Sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
Spring is in the air at Littleton Coin Company, and we want to help you brighten your collection. Visit us at littletoncoin.com all month long to enjoy 15% off your purchase. With a wide selection of coins, paper money, supplies, and more, Littleton Coin Company has something for every collector's taste. Use promo code SPRING at littletoncoin.com for 15% off your purchase all month long. Restrictions apply. Littleton Coin Company. Serving collectors since 1945.